Unincorporated business is primarily the business of a sole trader. So if there is a sole trading, if there is a sole trading entity, a person is not operating through a partnership, or he is, he is, there is no company structure in place, और वो खुद का धंधा कर रहा है. जैसे, for example, if I want to start my own coaching classes and I don't necessarily want to incorporate a company, so what I do is I basically have my own business and I carry it under the name Satyamit Coaching Classes, and that becomes my unincorporated business वाला discussion. ठीक है. अब इसमें the provisions are relatively straightforward, but जितना capital gains बोलो या companies बोलो, their provisions ना tend to be a little more precise. So in the case of unincorporated businesses, the provisions are not so precise. थोड़ा सा कहीं कहीं पे ना there is a level of vagueness which might confuse us. Okay, so the first thing is trading income. Income arising from trade, profession, or vocation is assessed as the trading income in an individual's income tax working. In entering into a transaction or a series of transactions, see, अगर आप skill level में होते ना तो a question could be tested on whether it is a business or not a business. Is it employment or is it self employment? ऐसा टाइप का क्वेश्चन स्किल लेवल में आता है. पी लेवल में those you don't have those calculations, or that expectation is not there. It is a trading business. You have to calculate the taxable trading profit and take the calculation ahead from there. There are two ways of calculating the taxable trading profit. One is the top-down approach and the other is the bottom-up approach. Top-down approach में क्या करो? From the total income, subtract all the allowable deductions. What are these allowable deductions? Expenses which the income tax allows you to subtract from total income to arrive at the taxable income. So from this 1000, you will subtract 300 purchase cost. Depreciation as per Companies Act is not allowed to be deducted. So what you will subtract is you will subtract capital allowances, which is the depreciation as allowed by the tax authorities. वो subtract करो and then you arrive at the figure of taxable income. This is the top down approach, in which from total income deduct only those amounts which are allowed as a deduction. The bottom up approach is थोड़ा सा different. The bottom up approach says that you start from the net profit, which is the accounting profit. ठीक है. अब शुरुआत करो from accounting profit, from accounting to the value of accounting profit, which is after subtracting all the expenses in the P&L. So depreciation as per Companies Act and all of these expenses have been subtracted while arriving at the net profit. आपको निकालना है taxable profit. So while arriving at this 500 का accounting profit, 200 of accounting depreciation was subtracted, and this is not allowed as per the income tax provision. So 200 को आप add करो and then you subtract the capital allowances as per the Income Tax Act. So to the figure of accounting profit, add back all the disallowed items. Why? Because while arriving at this 500, all the disallowances had been subtracted. ठीक है. While arriving at this amount, all the disallowances had been subtracted. So you add back the disallowances here, and whatever are the specific amounts allowed by the income tax authorities, usko subtract karo, you will get your taxable income. Now in your ATX exam, you will mostly have the bottom up approach only. ठीक है. तो 200 was subtracted while arriving at 500, which is not an allowable expenditure. तो उसको आप add back करो and then whatever is the capital allowances का figure उसको subtract करो. How do you calculate the tax adjusted trading profit? The calculation of tax adjusted trading profit basically has allowable expenditures. These are allowed to be subtracted from accounting income to arrive at taxable profit. These are expenses incurred for running the business. The only test you have to apply here is, are the expenses incurred wholly, exclusively, and necessarily for the purpose of trade? Then there are certain disallowances. What are disallowances? Amounts that are not allowed to be subtracted from total revenue to arrive at taxable income. Now, there are different reasons why these might not be allowed as a deduction. For example, Companies Act का depreciation or accounting depreciation is not allowed as a deduction. The provision is very simple. It says that income tax authorities say कि भाई हमारा अपना approach है. We have our own approach for calculating depreciation, which we call capital allowances. तो वो subtract करो. डोंट सब्ट्रैक्ट द इनकम टैक्स वाला डेप्रिसिएशन, ठीक है। और फॉर एग्जाम्पल अ पेनल्टी कुड बी, एक सेकंड यार, दिस, जस्ट वन मोमेंट। हाँ, फाइन, डिस्कनेक्टेड फ्रॉम द वर्ल्ड, ओके। So, penalty, for example, a penalty is a punishment that has been given to you for doing a wrong activity. Now, if there you have been levied a punishment and you have been asked to pay 10,000, and then the income tax authorities allow you to subtract that amount while arriving at the figure of taxable income, then naturally everybody would consider a fine as an incentive, right? A fine is a deterrent. So fines below, penalties below, these are disallowances. These are not allowed to be subtracted. Now, owner's withdrawal from the business, when the owner withdraws funds from the business, those are not allowed as a deduction because that is not an expenditure. Or interest on overdue tax, excess salary to a family member, or part of a rental of a high emission car, we have that provision discussed later. Or there are certain amounts specifically mentioned, as you can see in this table, in which case the income tax authorities are very clear कि even if you debit these expenses to your P&L, उसका आपको डिडक्शन नहीं मिलेगा while calculating the taxable income. Okay, now then there could be additional trading income. Amounts earlier recorded as expense now being recorded as income, which is basically goods for own use. वो भी देखते हैं बाद में how to tackle goods for own use. Then there is additional expenditure. What is additional expenditure? Expenditure not debited to P&L, but it is allowed to be deducted while arriving at taxable profit. अब एक एग्जाम्पल आप ले सकते हो, the lease premium on short leases. Okay, that amount is not debited to P&L, but it is allowed as a deduction. या फिर capital allowances are not debited to P&L, but they are allowed as a deduction. So these are additional amounts which you can subtract from total income to arrive at taxable profit. And then you have non-trading income. Okay, so think of a regular P&L. When you prepare a regular P&L, interest on fixed deposits, and then what else is there? Interest on fixed deposits, then uske baad dividend that you receive on shares, all of that is credited to P&L, right? But these are not trading incomes, these are investment incomes. Now, while arriving at the, look at this, okay, while arriving at the accounting profit of 60, 200 of sales, I have added 10 rupees of interest. From that, I have subtracted 50 of allowable expenditure, and this 60 that I have arrived at, okay, this 60 that I have arrived at is my accounting profit. Now, if we want to calculate the trading income, understand one thing, that while arriving at this accounting profit of 60, we have included the interest income of 10. But this interest income of 10 is not my trading income, it is my investment income. So isko subtract karo, subtract 10 here, and then in the interest income or investment income part, include this amount, savings income part, include this amount separately. If you are using the bottom up approach, ठीक है, if you are using the bottom up approach, accounting profit, while calculating the accounting profit, this 10 must have been added, तो 60 minus 10 करो, you will arrive at 50. Okay, this is the trading profit. या फिर if you are using the top down approach, don't add only ना, 100 minus 50 करो, you will get your trading income. So the focus is कि जो भी non trading income से उनको आप हटा दो, and then you arrive at the amount of your, just the amount of your trading income. If you are using the bottom up approach, subtract 10. If you are using the top down approach, then don't add 10 in the first place. So वो आपके total income में include होगा ही नहीं, ठीक है। If you are using if you are looking at disallowances and you are using the bottom up approach, add back the disallowance. If you are using the top down approach, subtract ही मत करो, simple. Okay, now there are certain special items which might come as a 2 or 3 mark adjustment. The first one of these is allowable expenses of a leased car. Okay, Sanjana owns an Audi Q5 whose CO2 emissions are 65 grams per kilometer. Sanjana leases it out to Dhruv at an annual rental of 50,000 pounds, and CO2 emissions are greater than 50 grams per kilometer. ठीक है, Dhruv is paying 50,000 grams as lease rental for car. ठीक है, Sanjana has given her car to Dhruv and he is using that car in his business. She has given it out to him on rent. It's a lease agreement. Dhruv is paying 50,000 pounds as lease rental for car. Dhruv will not be allowed to claim full 50,000 as a deduction while calculating taxable income. 15% is disallowed. So 50,000 ka 15%, 7,500 is disallowed. For a leased car where CO2 emissions are greater than 50 grams, 15% of the leasing cost is disallowed in TATP calculation, and if not, then there is no adjustment required to TATP. Government often introduces these measures in order to keep pollution under control. So, long story short, if I am a business owner and I have taken a car on lease to be used in my business, and the CO2 emission of that car is greater than 50 grams per kilometer, then 15% of the leasing cost is disallowed. Okay, now allowable expenses of short lease premium. Okay, what are allowable expenses of short lease premium? Here, whatever is the amortization charged in books of accounts added back and subtract property income assessed on the landlord divided by period of lease. This is from the lessee's point of view. Understand what they are trying to say here. Okay. Amounts charged to P&L as per IFRS 16 should be disallowed. They are calling these amounts amortization charged as per books. As per IFRS 16, आप क्या करते हो? You debit depreciation on the right of use asset, you debit finance charges to P&L. Up, these are all accounting concepts. So the tax authority say usko add back karo, and whatever income was included by the landlord in his income tax working, same amount you can claim as an expense. ठीक है. Property income assessed on the landlord divided by period of lease. Now, can you tell me under property income, how do you calculate income from lease premium? There is a formula, right? Do you remember that?
Sir, there are two formulas. Lease premium into 51 minus n upon 50.
Okay. Lease premium into 51 minus n upon 50. Say, for example, that value comes to 3760 and the landlord had to add that as an income. You can claim 3760 as an expense. Okay. Then there is pre-trading expenditure. Any revenue expenditure incurred in the 7 years before a business commences to trade is treated as an allowable deduction against trading profits on the first day of trading. Revenue expenditure incurred in the 7 years before a business commences. Say right now, think about it this way. I want to start my own classes after 2 years, and I am right now paying an editor to edit my videos before putting them on YouTube. So the amount that I am paying to this editor is a pre-trading expenditure. I have not yet started my business, but I am paying this amount to the editor to do the editing job for me. Okay, so what is ideally happening in this case is this is for the business that I'm going to start after 2 years. So on the first day of trading, any expenditure incurred before the business commences, that amount is allowed as a deduction. These are basically any revenue expenditure incurred in the 7 years before a business commences to trade. Okay. And capex incurred capex incurred within 7 years of the start of the trade is treated as incurred on the first day of the trading and may be eligible for capital allowances. However, the actual date of acquisition determines the rate of FYA and AIA available. Okay, guys, just give me one moment. Just one moment. Okay. So pre-trading expenditure, revenue expenditure incurred in the 7 years before the commencement of business allowed, capital expenditure incurred within 7 years of the start of the trade, that is also allowed, and you can claim AIA, FIA on day one. Now, how exactly are capital allowances calculated? Capital allowance निकालने के लिए you divide all your assets into main pool and special rate pool, plus उसमें आपको और classification करने हैं. Capital allowances are given on the original cost of a capital asset and all subsequent qualifying expenditure of a capital nature. ठीक है. अब how do you get relief for capital allowances? Basically you get it in the form of like how you get for depreciation. वैसे ही यहाँ पे भी calculate written down allowance. We also are eligible for something known as an annual investment allowance. ठीक है. अब let's understand how is that calculated. First of all, let's understand what are the different pool of assets. We don't calculate capital allowance on individual assets. Capital allowance is calculated on a pool of assets. In a pool of assets, all assets of a similar nature are put together and then the capital allowances are calculated. In the main pool, you have most items of plant and machinery. Most items of plant and machinery purchased are included within the main pool. Some cars are also included in the main pool at purchase, namely all cars with CO2 emissions between 1 gram and 50 gram and second-hand cars with zero CO2 emissions. Then, when an asset is acquired, the purchase price increases the value of the pool. When an asset is disposed of, the value of the pool is reduced by lower of sale proceeds and original cost. तो आप कंपेयर करो सेल प्रोसीड्स ऑफ द असेट एंड ओरिजिनल कॉस्ट ऑफ द असेट whatever is the lower of the two that has to be subtracted from the main pool and then you arrive at the balance amount and on that you will calculate the written down allowance. Items not included in the main pool are given to you, which is new zero CO2 emission car, new or second hand car with CO2 emissions in excess of 50 grams per kilometer, assets that are partly used for private purposes, partly by the owner, short life assets where a depooling election is made, they are not included. So basically, most items of plant and machinery, cars with zero CO2 emissions, second hand cars with zero CO2 emission, all cars with CO2 emissions between 1 gram and 50 gram and whenever a new asset is purchased उसका cost आप add कर दो या फिर if an asset is disposed of lower of original cost or sale proceeds जो भी lower होगा that has to be subtracted from the main pool. ठीक है. You also have something that is known as the special rate pool. Special rate pool, there are four items which are included: long life assets, then integral features of a building or structure, thermal insulation of a building, and high emission car. If I were to talk of a long life asset, what is a long life asset? Long life assets are defined as those with an expected working life of 25 years or more. Total cost of 1 lakh or more in a period of 12 months. If the definition is satisfied, the items must be treated as long life assets. So what are long life assets? Those with an expected working life of 25 years or more and total cost of 1 lakh pounds or more in a 12-month period. They are included in the special rate pool. Then integral features of a building or structure, thermal insulation, that is, winter time में जो heating के लिए you install for buildings, that is included, and high emission cars, that is cars with zero CO2 with CO2 emissions of greater than 50 grams per kilometer. ठीक है. अब now that you have classified the assets into main pool and the special rate pool, understand that अभी capital allowances कैसे मिलेगा. Now what you should keep in mind is the first type of capital allowance that you are allowed to subtract is the annual investment allowance. What is the annual investment allowance? जो भी आपने capital expenditure किया, on the first 10 lakhs of that capital expenditure, you are given this deduction. So annual investment allowance is 10 lakh. If the new assets purchased are 12 lakh, so 12 lakh minus 10 lakh करके written down allowance is calculated only on the remaining 2 lakh rupees. ये पूरा का पूरा annual investment allowance is allowed in the year of acquisition of that asset. You cannot carry it forward. ठीक है. It is available to all businesses, acquisition of plant and machinery in main pool and in special rate pool, but cars पे नहीं मिलता है. And on those assets which qualify for SBA, you don't get the annual investment allowance. It is limited to 10 lakh pounds in each 12-month period of account. ठीक है. अब where business spends more than 10 lakhs in a 12-month period of account on assets qualifying for AIA, the expenditure above the 10 lakh limit qualifies for the written down allowance. Note also that taxpayers do not have to claim all or any of the AIA if they do not want to. Any unused AIA cannot be carried forward or carried backward. ये एक पार्ट है. बाकी के pensions का जो AA है, annual allowance, that can be carried forward or sorry, that can be adjusted. But AIA, if you don't use it, वो waste हो जाता है आपका. ठीक है. AIA calculation must be done before taking account of any disposal. There is a memory technique also. I'll tell you what that is. And when it comes to related businesses, AIA must be split between related businesses. How do you explain related businesses? Businesses which engage in the same एक इंडिविजुअल का टू बिजनेसेस विच एंगेज इन द सेम एक्टिविटी, या फिर एक इंडिविजुअल का टू बिजनेसेस विच शेयर द सेम प्रेमाइसेस। ठीक है। सो माय कंसल्टिंग बिजनेस एंड माय टीचिंग बिजनेस आर कैरिड आउट फ्रॉम द सेम प्रेमाइसेस, देन वन सिंगल AIA फॉर बोथ द businesses. And if I have a coaching business in Delhi and a coaching business in New York, so in Mumbai for example, दो जगह पे मेरा coaching business है, तो it's owned by Satyamit, the same person. So if the two businesses engage in the same activities, then there is one single AIA between the two of them. ठीक है। If VAT registered include all additions of plant and machinery at the VAT exclusive price except cars with private fuel which are included at the VAT inclusive price. ठीक है। If not VAT registered include all additions at the VAT inclusive amounts, naturally फिर तो कोई choice भी नहीं होगा। Now remember one thing. Remember your ABCD. A comes before D, so AIA should be before disposal. A is before D, so AIA, I should have written A comes before D. So AIA before disposal. W comes after D. So WDA is after the disposal. ठीक है। So disposal का amount adjust करने के पहले you should subtract the AIA and WDA should be calculated on the amounts after the disposal. This is how I keep that in mind. WDA कैसे मिलता है? WDA you get on the written down value of the asset, which we call as the tax written down value. WDA is calculated after the adjustment of proceeds and it is proportionately reduced for shorter periods. Now think about it. My total assets purchased are 13 lakh. From that 13 lakh, I subtract 10 lakh annual investment allowance, and after that, I am left with 3 lakh. On the remaining 3 lakh, then I will charge another 18% written down allowance. ठीक है। अब एक बार जस्ट हैव अ क्विक लुक एट दीज कैलकुलेशंस। capex minus AIA on the amount that is left, you calculate the written down allowance. ठीक है। And if the period is shorter, then the AIA is proportionately reduced. ठीक है। If the fresh expenditure is less than 10 lakh, then AIA will be restricted. You will not get 10 lakh there. Okay. Now there is something known as the small pool WDA. What is this? Where the balance immediately before the calculation of WDA on the main and or the special rate pool is less than 1000, the balance can be claimed as WDA and written off in that year. ठीक है। सो अदरवाइज उसको आप डिप्रिशिएट करते रहोगे, यू विल कीप ऑन कैलकुलेटिंग द कैपिटल अलाउंस, द सेम कैलकुलेशन विल कीप ऑन रिपीटिंग एंड इट्स प्रिटी पॉइंटलेस टू डू दैट। सो आप क्या कर सकते हैं, 1000 या उससे स्मॉलर अमाउंट इज लेफ्ट ऑन द मेन पूल, तो बचा हुआ पूरा जो बैलेंसिंग अमाउंट है, टेक दैट एज द कैपिटल अलाउंस एंड डिस्कशन क्लोज कर दो। नाउ व्हेन इट कम्स टू क्लेमिंग द AIA जो आपको क्लेम करना है, you should first of all adjust it against the special rate pool because the rate of WDA in the special rate pool is smaller. वहां पे 6% WDA है, मेन पूल में 18% WDA है। If we were to talk of cars and to calculate capital allowances for cars, then there are four categories that you should think about. Zero emission electric powered cars. If these are new cars, then you get 100% FIA. If these are second hand cars, then uh, if these are second hand zero emission electric powered cars, then they go in the main pool. Cars with standard emission, okay, that is emissions between 1 to 50 grams per kilometer, they are put in the main pool, and WDA is 18% for a 12-month period. High emission cars are put in the special rate pool, and the WDA is 6% for a 12-month period. If you are talking about private use of car, then private use of car by the sole trader, to that extent, you will not get the capital allowance. The most important point is that cars are never eligible for AIA, and cars are only zero emission electric powered cars. If they are new, then they are eligible for first year allowance. And what is first year allowance? 100% first year allowance is given to new cars with zero CO2 emissions. The 100% FIA is given as follows. In the period of acquisition, 100% FIA is given instead of the WDA. Okay. So if it is a car, if it is a new car with a zero CO2 emission, तो पूरा का पूरा 100% of the amount can be claimed as a deduction in the first year itself. Okay, now if you want questions for practice, these are included in the sheet. It depends on the businesses to to claim capital allowances or not. If you decide not to claim capital allowances in the current year, तो current year में रहने दो, go and claim it in the next year. So let's assume that the WDA at the start of the year was 1 lakh, and this year you have pretty much आपका loss हो गया है. There is a tax loss in the current year. Now, if you calculate written down allowance or anything at the rate of 18%, then this 18% will be subtracted and it will increase the amount of tax loss. फिर वो tax loss carry forward करना पड़ेगा, फिर claim करना पड़ेगा. A lot of other problems are there. So a business entity could decide not to claim capital allowances at all in a particular year. तो that particular year you will not get any capital allowance. So आपका TWDV कम नहीं होगा, and in the next year you can claim. सो अगर आप करंट ईयर में क्लेम करते तो TWDV वुड हैव बीन 82,000 एंड नेक्स्ट ईयर में आपका क्लेम आता ओनली 14,716. बट व्हाट यू कैन डू इज यू कैन डिसाइड नॉट टू क्लेम द कैपिटल अलाउंस इन अ पर्टिकुलर ईयर एंड क्लेम द टोटल अमाउंट इन द नेक्स्ट ईयर. ठीक है. Okay. Now there is something known as a de-pooling election. What is the de-pooling election? The de-pooling election to treat an asset as a short life asset enables a trader to accelerate capital allowances on certain types of plant and machinery. The de-pooling election is available on plant and machinery where the intention is to sell or scrap the item within 8 years of the end of the period of account in which it is acquired. ये first condition है. There is an intention to dispose of or sell the asset within 8 years of the end of the period of account. It is beneficial if balancing allowance arises on disposal as it accelerates the capital allowances claim. Is not beneficial if it accelerates a balancing charge arising in this case. Okay. And if no disposal is made within 8 years from the end of the accounting period in which the asset is acquired, the balance on the short life asset goes back to the main. And ठीक है, WDAs are claimed in the future in the normal way. So what sometimes happens is if you continue calculating the amount of capital allowance at that 18%, 18%, 18%, so in a lot of cases what happens is the asset comes to an end, its useful life is over, or a new better replacement is there in the picture, but the old asset is not yet depreciated. It is still in the books. It is still in the tax working. So although the asset is out, you keep on claiming that depreciation, or that capital allowance will keep on getting claimed for a longer period of time. So in order to avoid that, what we are doing is we are so अगर एक ऐसा asset होगा which is expected to be sold in the next 8 years, तो उसको आप main pool में से हटाओ and you write it in a separate column. That decision is known as the de-pooling election. Okay. Now, when there is a de-pooling election, naturally you will have a choice that at the end of 8th year, suppose the total carrying amount at the start of the year was 80,000 and the asset was sold for 20,000. तो हो गया 60,000 balancing allowance. उतना amount आप claim कर लो as an expense. Otherwise, what will happen? Otherwise, the amount of expense. Otherwise क्या होगा? That asset value will be stuck in time, and although asset निकल चुका है आपके books of accounts में से, you will have a situation where asset is out. Physically, it is not in use, but on that you are still calculating the capital allowances. So it will create a lot of disparity in your workings, and to avoid that, we are using this particular method. ठीक है? Guys, 1 second, huh? 1 second, just one moment. चलो ये डीपूलिंग इलेक्शन पे एक क्वेश्चन देख लेते हैं, बिकॉज द डीपूलिंग इलेक्शन इज समवॉट डिफरेंट. ठीक है. Geeta has traded for many years, preparing accounts to 31st of March each year. The TWDV on the main pool was 15,000 on 1st of April 23. In May 23, she acquired a new machine costing 1 lakh. She anticipated that the machine would last 2 years, and she eventually sold it on 30th June for 17,500. In August 2023, she acquired general plant and machinery for 11 lakh pounds. Calculate the allowances available for each year, illustrating whether or not an election to treat the machine as a short life asset would be beneficial. ठीक है. If you depool, the asset does not remain a part of the main pool and separate calculations are required. ठीक है. Opening TWTV कितना था? 15,000. In May 23, she acquired a new machine for 1 lakh. She anticipated that the machine would last for 2 years. तो यहाँ पे डीपूलिंग इलेक्शन हो सकता है. In August 2023, she acquired new general plant and machinery for 11 lakh. ठीक है. So ये 1 lakh हो गया, ये 11 lakh हो गया. All of it is eligible for AIA. 15,000 plus 12 lakh addition during the year minus 10 lakh. बचा कितना बैलेंस? 2 lakh 15,000. इस पे 18% WDA निकाला. I get 1 lakh 76,300. Look at tax year 24-25. Opening TWDV पे 18% WDA, you get TWDV to be carried forward. 25-26 में opening TWDV 144,566, disposal proceeds 17,500, balance हो गया 127,066, उस पे 18% निकाला. These are your capital allowances for 3 years. And capital allowance claimed in the last year is 22,872. देखो, asset has been disposed of, but उसका remaining amount is still in the TWDV of the pool only. But if you go for the short life asset or the depooling election, तो ये जो न्यू asset purchased है, keep it separately, don't mix it with the main pool. यहाँ पे 10 लाख subtract करो, यहाँ पे कुछ भी subtract नहीं होगा. You will be left with 1,15,000. शॉर्ट लाइफ असेट है 1 लाख. इस पे 18% कैलकुलेट करो 2,700. इस पे 18% कैलकुलेट करो 18,000. ईयर वन में इफ यू ऑब्जर्व, यहाँ पे द कैपिटल अलाउंस विदाउट द डीपूलिंग इलेक्शन इज 38,700. यहाँ पे ऑल्सो विद द डीपूलिंग इलेक्शन इन द ईयर ऑफ एक्विजिशन अमाउंट ऑफ कैपिटल अलाउंस इज द सेम. ईयर टू में अगर आप देखो तो 176,300 पे 18%, 31,734. और यहाँ पे अगेन द टोटल अमाउंट ऑफ कैपिटल अलाउंसेस इज 31,374, सॉरी 31,734, एंड वी आर ओके विथ इट. अब लास्ट ईयर में आओ, द ईयर इन विच द डिस्पोजल हैपेंड. इसका ओपनिंग TWDV 77,326, उस पे 18% WDA निकाला 13,919. नाउ द असेट हैज बीन रिटन सेपरेटली, उसको एक अलग पूल में डाल दिया है. ओके, द असेट हैज बीन पुट इन अ सेपरेट कैलकुलेशन, सिंगल असेट. उसका ओपनिंग TWDV है 67,240. उसमें से डिस्पोजल प्रोसीड्स माइनस करो 17,500. You are left with 49,740. Now think about it. This is an individual asset. This is an individual asset जिसमें books में balance है 49,740, but the asset is not in existence anymore. तो आपने उस asset पे claim कर लिया balancing allowance, and the total capital allowance claimed in the last year is 63,659. ये कहाँ से आया? 13,949 plus this. ठीक है. Total capital allowance claimed is 63,659. Whereas in the first case, without the depooling election, you were claiming 22,872. ठीक है. सो व्हेन यू वर कैलकुलेटिंग द बैलेंसिंग अलाउंस हियर इन द लास्ट ईयर, आपने क्या किया? लास्ट ईयर में एनीवे यू हैड सेपरेटेड आउट द असेट, तो उस पे आपने इंडिविजुअली गेन और लॉस या बैलेंसिंग अलाउंस निकाला या बैलेंसिंग चार्ज निकाला, एंड दैट मच अमाउंट यू क्लेम्ड इन द लास्ट ईयर. सो इट हेल्प यू इन द एक्सेलरेशन ऑफ क्लेमिंग ऑफ द कैपिटल अलाउंसेस. ठीक है. एक बार देख लो दोनों कैलकुलेशंस एंड देन लेट मी नो. देख लो समथिंग लाइक दिस. सी ये ऐसे तो ना, इट्स मोर लाइक अ स्किल लेवल थिंग. To me it doesn't seem like something that will form the focus of your P level preparation, बट सिलेबस में दिया है तो देख लो एक बार, ठीक है? Okay. Now, hire purchase assets. Basically, hire purchase is not exactly like a lease, but is similar to a lease. So, for hire purchase contracts, the individual is treated as if the asset was purchased outright when the contract was taken out. The hire purchase interest is treated as an allowable trading expense of the period in which it accrues. Capital allowances are based on cash price regardless of actual installments paid in the period of account. सो हायर परचेस में आपको जो डिडक्शन मिलेगा, हायर परचेसेस, you can think of it like a purchase on installments and the asset becomes yours at the end of the term, usually matlab more like a finance lease. So the interest expense is allowed as a deduction and capital allowances are allowed on the cash price, not on the total amount including the installments. Now, अभी जो unincorporated businesses है, अभी तो life is pretty easy for them. Earlier, when I had started teaching ATX, उस time पे ना the rules of assessment were very different and sorry to say, but those were extremely complex. मतलब बहुत उसमें परेशानी होता था. But अभी all of that is not there. The rules have been heavily simplified uh, for all the subsequent years. ठीक है? So in this case, we study something that is known as the transition profit. हमने transition profit कब देखा था? We had studied transition profit towards the fag end of the syllabus. एक question आया था हमें, which is why we had started the discussion on transition profits. Now, where does this idea come from? Till 22-23 tax year था ना, there were different approaches to calculating the टैक्स एंड ऑल्सो कंसिडरिंग द पीरियड फॉर कैलकुलेशन ऑफ टैक्स. मतलब उसमें फर्स्ट ईयर के अलग रूल्स थे, सेकंड ईयर के अलग रूल्स थे, थर्ड ईयर के अलग रूल्स थे, एंड देन फोर्थ ईयर ऑनवर्ड्स द रूल्स वर सेम फॉर ऑल द सब्सिक्वेंट ईयर्स. बट टिल दैट पॉइंट इन टाइम you had all of these complex rules because of which there was a concept called overlap profits, और मतलब था अच्छा खासा confusion was there. But what HMRC did in the tax year 23-24 is that they simply made the rules very, very easy to follow by introducing quite a few uh, easy rules of calculating the taxable income. But because of this, what happened in the year 23-24, that was considered as the transition year, which is why certain profits for that particular period are called transition profits. और उसका जो benefit है, see what was happening is there was an overlap profit because you were changing the basis of assessment, you were aligning everyone to 6th of April to 5th of April. पहले कैसा था, somebody could run the year from Jan to December and tax it in a certain period. तो ऐसे बहुत कुछ अलग अलग से provisions थे. And in the year 23-24 this overlap was happening. What do you mean by overlap was happening? There was a certain period of time, for example, which was taxable in the last year also, last tax year maybe, or current tax year maybe. So in order to avoid this double taxation burden on individuals, HMRC came up with the idea of transition profits. These additional profits, which all these additional profits will automatically be spread over 5 tax years, starting from 23-24, with 1/5 getting taxed each year, or the taxpayer can elect to tax the income, can elect to tax some or all of these profits earlier to take advantage of lower taxes. For example, with a cash flow disadvantage, as tax will be paid sooner. So what you are doing is in the current year, you think that there is going to be a loss. So you think that there's going to be a loss, and because you think that there's going to be a loss, so after, instead of adjusting 1/5 of the profit, you adjust the entire profit in the current year, or you adjust a larger amount of transition profit in the current year. वो चलता है. But from the year 23-24 onwards, every year you have to tax 1/5, 1/5, 1/5 of the transition profits, and transition profit ka figure is usually given to you in the exam. Who is saying that? The ATX examining team has confirmed that calculation of transition profit is not examinable. Where relevant, the question will provide the amount of transition profits arising in the tax year 23-24 and the amount which has already been subject to income tax. So बचा हुआ amount will be subjected to tax. ठीक है. And tax year 24-25 onwards, profits for the year ended 31st of March 25 are taxed in the year 24-25. If a business does not have a 31st of March 5th of April year end, then trading profits must be time apportioned into the tax year. अगर किसी का business Jan to December चलता है तो make sure that you include the right months in the right year. So this is the change in basis of assessment. पहले करंट ईयर रूल्स था, सेकंड ईयर रूल्स था, बहुत ज्यादा कंफ्यूजिंग थे, मतलब शुरू में तो मुझे भी तकलीफ होता था टू कीप दीज रूल्स इन माइंड, बट नाउ ऑफ कोर्स दे आर क्वाइट सिंप्लीफाइड ऑन दैट एक्सटेंट. अब इन आवर रेगुलर बैच वी हैड डिस्कस्ड, बाकी सब हमारा हो गया था, बट द ट्रांजिशन प्रॉफिट्स पार्ट इज समथिंग दैट वी डिस्कस्ड टुवर्ड्स द फैग एंड. ठीक है, transition profits will be given to you, and how are they supposed to be adjusted? 1/5 each year, unless of course you want to adjust a higher amount in a particular year because the circumstances so demand. Are you all with me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay.